I'm alone against hordes, neither can I stop or let go. I stand here in the cold hours, alone against every single foe. My name is that of Lugh, and I lay allegiance to my oldest blood. For my legacy is that of these stories and not of imported ideologies. Therefore, I shall seek to honor that legacy. The Irish god of nobility and a former king of the Tuatha Dé Danann, Lugh is not just a fascinating figure known to people over the years, but was also one of the most important Celtic divinities, particularly in Ireland, where he represents the light of the sun. Originating as an all-wise and all-seeing deity holding dominion over nobility, Lugh of the Long Arms was more accurately portrayed as a master of all crafts and a cunning warrior. Such a prominent figure in many stories of Irish mythology, especially where it leads the Tuatha Dé Danann to victory at the Second Battle of Moy Tura. Most of the accounts depict the Irish entity as a handsome young man carrying a spear that none could stand against. Despite the popularity of his name in the Celtic world, the meaning behind it has been the source of significant debate, causing light differences in its pronunciation, often changing from Lugh, Lugh, and Lugh depending on the account. Perhaps because of the brightness of his being, many saw in him a solo divinity whose name comes from the Latin word for light, lux, even though modern scholars find this unlikely to be the case. However, in a much broader context of Indo-European languages, Lugh is thought to be connected to the Proto-Indo-European word Leuk, which means brightness or light. This etymological link further strengthens his association to the sun and light, as the deity is often considered a solar figure in Celtic mythology. It has also been suggested that the name has another Proto-Indo-European root in Lugio, bearing the meaning to bind by oath and referring to his role in regard to the making of oaths and justice in their various forms, for he oversaw the keeping of promises, and as such, his judgment was known to be swift and without mercy. In what may seem like a contradiction though, Lugh was also a trickster who was willing to lie, cheat and steal to overcome his opponents. So the Irish god was in this manner similar in many ways to Lugus, a trickster entity pictured by the Romans as the Gaulish Mercury. Lugh went by numerous epithets including the common Lugh Lámfhada, meaning Lugh of the Long Arms. Now, what seems interesting to me here is that he was given this epithet not because his arms dragged on the ground, but because his weapons extended his reach beyond other warriors' abilities. So it's fair to assume that his prowess using magical artifacts made him such a fierce opponent in battle. These incredible weapons in Lugh's possession involved not only a deadly sling, but the legendary spear known to be one of the 4 treasures of the Tuatha Dé Danann, an unbeatable weapon having the unique property of returning to its own after striking its target, and could turn into lightning when thrown away. I'm pretty sure that many will recognize the similarity in what we see in Norse mythology with Mjolnir, the mighty hammer of the god of thunder. Following the death of his foster father, Lugh inherited a sword that had a special ability to force anyone to answer any question truthfully. Because of his personal talents and the list of powerful artifacts at his disposal, it's not surprising that his role within the Irish pantheon of gods is so well known. The legends regarding the story behind his birth were mostly acquired from the Cath Maighe Tuireadh. Lugh was apparently the grandson of the Fomorian king Balor through his daughter Ethniu, and his father was Cian of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Following his birth along 2 other siblings, only one had a chance to live, indicating that he was a multiple divinity, which explains his incredible powers, as he was in reality 3 people in one. According to the myth, the Tuatha Dé Danann and the Fomorians had long been enemies in Ireland, but then started to live in peace and even intermarried. So the union of Cian and Ethniu was often seen as a marriage alliance between both parties. However, another tale differed from this version, speaking of a prophecy that warned King Balor that one day he would be slain by his grandchild. As a safety measure, he had his daughter locked up in a tower to keep himself safe by assuring that she never saw a man. Not too long after, Cian, who sought for revenge against Balor for stealing his cow, came across the tower, had an affair with Ethniu and became the father of triplets. When the evil king heard of the unfortunate news, he ordered for the babies to be thrown into the sea, where 2 of them perished. The last one was rescued by the Irish god of the sea, Manannán mac Léir, who became the infant's foster father. Yet regardless of the circumstances of his conception, Lugh quickly rose to a high position in the court of King Nuada. In the Lebor Gabála Érenn, also known as the Book of Invasions, we are being told that he traveled to the court of Tara seeking a place among the noble warriors of the Tuatha Dé Danann. But the court's policy required that whoever wanting to enter in service should offer a specific talent no one else had. Such a trivial matter for the god who successfully charmed his way into one of the highest status one could have in the court. So by auditioning his numerous skills to the doorkeeper, his mastery over the arts of a warrior, a harpist, a poet, a blacksmith and a sorcerer made such an intense statement that his value couldn't be denied to the High King. Upon realizing the worth of one man possessing so many different talents, Nuada himself quickly awarded Lugh with a position that gave him much of the same reputation and attributes only afforded to the king, which is that of Chief Olam. This historic title reflected his many skills and earned him a new epithet, the Samildánach, the master of all crafts. Believing that his abilities could bring salvation to their tribe, Nuada put Lugh in charge of the coming war against the Fomorians. Before the war could proceed, however, King Nuada was forced to step down in accordance with tribal tradition stipulating that a king couldn't be blemished. So after losing his hand at the first battle of Moy Tura, he was replaced by Lugh Lámfhada who delayed the inevitable, then compelled the people of the goddess Danu to pay tribute to their enemies and even work as their slaves for 27 years. But once Nuada regained the throne, Lugh immediately prepared for war by seeking the counsel of the Phantom Queen, the Morrigan. And at last, the Tuatha Dé Danann went to war against the Fomorian army at the second battle of Moy Tura. In the midst of the war, Balor murdered King Nuada, then ended up facing his grandson in a single combat. And just like he has been prophesied, Lugh killed his grandfather by cutting off his head after a successful slingshot into his baleful eye. The stone that went through and out the back of his skull got rid of many other Fomorians standing behind him, driving them back to the sea where they came from. Following their victory, Lugh Lámfhada was declared king of the Tuatha Dé Danann for his heroic accomplishments and went on ruling his new kingdom for many flourishing years. The fact that he was often recognized as a harvest entity implies that his encounter against Balor was part of a mythic cycle whose meaning may be lost, but used to symbolize a seasonal change, for it was him who led the Tuatha Dé Danann in their final battle. Even though they won the campaign, the people of the goddess Danu never forgave the half-Fomorian Brest Makelada, but Lugh decided to spare his life in exchange of agricultural knowledge, which is another connection between the deity and the seasonal cycle that culminates in harvest. The retribution on the murderers of his father is another tale Lugh takes part of. This story goes back to when Cian was sent north to gather an army for the upcoming war opposing them to their dreadful nemesis, but he was waylaid and killed by the three sons of Tuireadh. Soon after discovering his father's crushed body inside a grave, the land around it told him of what happened and who did this terrible deed. Devastated by his loss, Lugh set the siblings to a series of nearly impossible tasks requiring the collection of few items from around the world. At the end of this challenging quest, the brothers were terribly wounded and two of them died on their way back to Ireland. The last one who somehow made it was denied any form of healthcare to heal his injuries and succumbed afterwards. The mighty hound Fomorian and the spear of Lugh were both acquired from the great labors done by these brothers. In spite of his strength as a powerful leader, the story of Lugh ended up in a tragedy as he was in his turn a victim of a trio of brothers, and his death was rather anticlimactic considering his glorious achievements. According to some account, it all started when a kinsman of his called Kermit had an affair with his wife. In retribution, Lugh took his life away. The sons of Kermit sought for revenge and in time returned the favor, so Lugh was hunted down only to lose his life in a lake, drowned by one of them. The three brothers then divided Ireland between themselves, and Lugh was replaced by the Dagda, even though many believe that his death marked the beginning of the end of the Tuatha Dé Danann. After his demise, few locations were listed for being the forever dwelling of the famous Irish god, notably in the Brunna Boyne or Tirnanach. a supernatural domain of the everlasting youth, joy and beauty. Being a god on his own rights, Lugh occasionally came into the world of the living, and it was during one of these appearances that he sired the Ulster cycle greatest hero, Cú Chulainn, of his birth name Shetanta. Many years later, Lugh appeared to him during the cattle raid of Cooley, healing his injuries over a period of 3 days. Like his father, the infamous warrior similarly rose to greatness at a young age and fought the supernatural enemies of Ireland. Bearing the name of the Irish deity and marking the beginning of the harvest season, Lughnasadh was an important festival held across Ireland and celebrated in pagan communities on August. In the Irish version of its origin, Lugh dedicated this festival to his foster mother and hosted a myriad of games in her memory. Besides celebrating the ripening of grain and the maturing of potatoes, Lughnasadh was a time for feasting, athletic competitions and horse racing, reflecting the diverse connections of Lugh to prosperity and abundance. These events akin to the Olympic Games continue to be performed up to date, serving as a reminiscence of the variety of roles the god has in Irish culture. Moreover, this celebration has a strong association to the sun, for he was perceived as a solar deity bringing light and warmth to the world. His legacy persisted in many places in Europe and was the origin of the name Lugaid adopted by many heroic figures in later Irish history. Therefore, Lugh Lámfhada is without a doubt one of the most prominent characters of Irish literature. He quickly rose to a position of power within his father's lineage and played a crucial role in the Second Battle of Maighe Tuireadh, then finally became the High King of Ireland before his unfortunate death. Such was his wide appeal. His unique background heritage as a son of both the Tuatha Dé Danann and the Fomorians will always run through Irish mythology, but as the Celtic tradition in Ireland diminished, so did his reputation and stature over time. Before ending our video, there is a question I feel still left unanswered. Why such a powerful figure, seemingly invincible in battle, could have fallen a victim of 3 siblings? I might be wrong, but my personal take on it is that, what if Lugh saw in this course of events the ultimate way to make amends for the pain he had caused? Because he himself knew what it's like to suddenly lose a father to somebody's hatred. And what a righteous way to do it than just giving himself up to those he sadly wronged. Interesting enough, they turned out to be 3 brothers, as if Lugh was meant to die by the hands of 3 entities, for he was himself 3 people in one. And with his death, the cycle is complete. Who kills by the sword shall die by it, I guess. It's truly fascinating how symbolic the number 3 actually was for the ancient Celts, especially with its emphasis in the story of Lugh, who was a major deity in their tradition compared to any other figure one could come across with. With that being said, hopefully you found this video insightful and worth watching. If so, leave it a like and consider subscribing as well. As I don't consider myself pretty well versed in Celtic mythology, if there's anything I missed, feel free to share your thoughts with me in the comment section. And as always, stay curious.